You could just sing that as the intro if you want. Sing it and do a stupid dance as well. That would be hilarious.
Everyone loves a halfling, a halfling, a halfling. Everyone loves a halfling. Do 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 do.
Ladies and gentlemen, look who's back on the battlefield. By popular demand, the Halflings are back, led by the veteran general of the furry-footed brigade himself, Halfling Pete.
Oh.
He's back and he means business. Let's see what he's got to get his sweet vengeance upon the dwarves. Starting at this end, are these rangers?
They are rangers scouting up ahead.
They certainly are, and they are going to be stubborn, as ordained by the chuckwagon, which administers various abilities at the start of the game on all the units, so that's going to be handy for them. Then we've got some ram riders, 10 of them to be precise. They're also going to be stubborn. Have they got any special items going on for them?
They have not.
We have 3 beekeepers, who I'm not sure this +1 strength in the first round of combat is going to be any help to them, really.
Well, the bees are strength 1, so it'll be strength 2.
That could come into play if you're against anyone other than dwarves. Strength 2 sadly ain't going to cut it, but they will be dispensing their bees at any point, hoping to cause some havoc for the dwarves over here. We move a long way over, there's a big gap in their lines there, to this 30-strong unit of housewives. Now, they can reroll fail leadership tests, which is going to be handy if they move out of range of the battle standard, which is right next to them, so it's not that big of a deal. Do they have a magic banner or anything?
We do. We have the washing line, which, if it gets dirty during combat, they become frenzied. As you can see, the shirt-tie combo there going on.
That is quite a rule they've got.
And also the wizard sneaking in.
Yes, there's a wizard in there. He is actually quite well disguised, isn't he?
He is. He fits quite well.
Blends in well until you see that he's got moons and stars all over his cape. Next unit, we have the pantry guard. There's 30 of them, isn't there?
There are.
Led by a master chef, which is the one in black, of course, to stand out.
Actually, he's a master chef on
is
top
he?
of them. We've got an extra master chef. We've got a superb master chef on top.
Okay, so the master chef that's just dressed as a soldier this
we've
time.
got a master chef and an even better master chef.
2 master chefs.
Yeah.
And what about this guy on the end here?
He is a wizard as well, in pyjamas.
Okay, now, one thing I forgot to ask. That wizard over there, what's his lore of magic?
His lore of magic is somewhere in here. He's got lore of heavens.
Right, and which spells did he get?
He got a lore of Uramon's Thunderbolt and Harmonic Convergence.
Ooh, and then what about this wizard here?
The PJ's one has the lore of Shadows, where he's got Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, and the Withering.
Tasty. So, 30 of those guys with the chuckwagon, they're going to be quite difficult to shift. Do they have a magic banner, by any chance?
They do have a magic banner, which is very useful because their magic banner does exciting things. They have the Honeycomb banner, which is +1 strength plus frenzy.
That's going to be quite good.
Plus their +1 strength.
+1 strength in the first round, as the chuckwagon dictates. At the back there, 2 hot pot catapults who are both going to be stubborn. I don't think that's going to really be useful at all, though.
Guys in the trees.
And there are some guys hiding in the trees, thinking maybe we should displace the trees so we can actually have them on the table. But there is a unit. How many men are in that?
20.
And what are they?
They are just normal militia.
Normal halfling militia with bows. And they can reroll failed leadership tests.
They can.
Then, over here, we have some more...
Beekeepers.
2 more units of beekeepers who can reroll failed leadership tests. That came up quite a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, it's because I kept rolling a 1.
And then, 20 just typical militia here, aren't they?
Yep.
Nothing special about that unit whatsoever, other than that they can reroll. No, they have strength in the first round of combat +1.
Yay.
Now, this is a bit of a tasty unit, though, isn't it?
This is the best unit ever.
Is it the Vigilante Guard or something?
Vigilante Guard.
Yeah, there's how many? 49, isn't it?
Yes.
49 of them, they can reroll leadership tests, and they have this vast array of characters in the front rank.
Vast array being 2.
Yes. They have the wizard, and what does that wizard have?
A beard.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, but a wizard needs a beard. Sadly, he doesn't have one. He has the lore of the moot.
And which spells did he get from the lore of the moot?
He has a famine and kin. My monk wizard here has the cockerel scroll, if someone is to cast any offensive magic against my army, I can read that, and there is a chance of them turning into a cockerel. As your only casting thing is the...
Yes, it is possible that the anvil could turn into a cockerel by the end of the game, so look out for that. It's going to be quite nasty. And this giant M&M stuck in the middle of the lines here.
He's not a giant M&M, we've got a giant M&M separately.
He's a smaller M&M.
He is. He is my lord and master, who has a few magic items. He has a wheat shield, which gives him +5 regen, and that's pretty much him. He's not very exciting as a general.
So he's just got regeneration.
Yep.
So that's okay. We've got some stubborn hawk riders. And next to them we have some swan riders who can reroll failed leadership tests. Is there any special items on these guys?
Nope.
Well, they're just going to be causing some
havoc,
airborne mayhem, no doubt. And finally, we've got some more...
stubborn...
rangers, are they?
They are rangers.
Yep, some more rangers. And their banner depicts...
Steve Allen.
Legendary media icon Steve Allen.
He was the ultimate pog.
He was. So, let's whiz round to the other side and look at the dwarves. Okay, starting at this end, we have a grudge thrower with the rune of accuracy. Ah! I just knocked over a hawk rider with my elbow. No damage was done. Here we have 10 iron drakes. No special banner on them. Sliding down beyond the woods, we have 20 hammerers. No extra characters in there, but they do have the rune of Grugni, which will give a 5+ ward save to any unit nearby and themselves of 5+. Against shooting, that is. Then we have a unit of hand weapon and shield dwarves, just basic, with a runesmith in there as well, who will be giving them armor piercing and magic resistance. Behind them you might see the Anvil of Doom. Not a very optimal choice, but it's in there anyway. Then we have 20 Iron Breakers with the BSB, who has the Master Rune of Valaya, which will help me to stop some of his terribly offensive magic. And the Dwarf Lord, who has the Master Rune of Snorri Spangelheim, a single Rune of Fury and a single Rune of Iron. Over here we have 28 Great Weapon Warriors, 7 wide, for maximum effect. We have... I believe I'm supposed to be adding 3 more to this unit. I'll do that, not right now though. We have some Quarrelers. Then over here we have the Organ Gun, who has the Rune of Accuracy and the Rune of Forging. A Master Engineer behind there to help out as well. And a Gyrocopter. Also, I forgot to mention, the Runesmith over there has the Rune of Spellbreaking. Also, the Iron Breakers have the Rune of Slowness. Halflings got the first turn, and this is the end of their movement phase. The swans and the hawks have got to within striking distance of this little artillery centre here, which is quite a way away from my lines. Everything else has just advanced up a tad, as far as they can really, including over here, the Ram Riders, perilously positioned here now. So, let's see what he can do in the magic phase, shall we? So, a very eventful magic phase. This innocent looking little wizard here, he makes you think he doesn't know anything about the winds of magic. The Halflings got 9 dice, I had 8 dispel dice through some channeling shenanigans. He decided he was going to cast Uranon's Thunderbolt at the Organ Gun, which has disappeared. He cast it with Irresistible Force, so it was D6 Strength 6 hits. He got 5 hits, and 3 of them wounded, so the Organ Gun exploded, with no chance to do anything about it because it was irresistible. So I was thinking maybe as a consolation the wizard's head will blow up and he'll take half that unit with him. But sadly no, he just got a power drain and forgot the spell that he just used. So he's definitely got his money's worth out of that wizard. Organ Gun goes kaboom, and no other spells went off, did they?
No, they all failed.
Oh dear. Not a good start for the dwarves. Okay, something just to clear up for a second. You may have noticed that a rather large posteriored Slayer has appeared there. That's because I forgot to deploy my Demon Slayer because he was added into the list. after I found out how many points the Halflings had. So we decided this was a fair place to put him, because he probably would have been there defending the organ gun that's now blown up. He actually has 2 times Rune of Fury, actually, and that's it. So he's going to be very nasty in combat. And a few more Quarrelers have appeared, because I was supposed to add a couple of those in as well, which I forgot. Now, Halfling shooting phase. Over here. Yeah, there was some shooting at the gyrocopter that did nothing. Then further down this way, those 2 hot pots at the back there took some shots over here. And they killed a few Iron Breakers. And they killed a few Great Weapon Warriors, so that was quite fruitful for them.
They did nothing.
They killed one Hammerer, didn't they, the archers in those woods. He's dead. And over here, these archers here killed 2 Iron Drakes. So, quite a bit of damage done by the Halflings so far, mainly the organ gun killed. But it's not looking too tasty for the Dwarves at this point. We'll see how they can counter-attack right now. Okay, Dwarf movement phase. Now, the shocking loss of the organ gun has caused panic to spread across the Dwarven ranks, and they've decided, you know what, let's just get stuck in now. They're going straight for it. Everyone's moved forward into a position to get into the attack fairly soon. Over here, not so much the Iron Drakes, they backed away a little bit because they're still going to be doing some shooting. Over here is where the fun is, though. Alric Big Butts, the Demon Slayer, is bearing down on that cavalry unit, followed by a Master Engineer who's got nothing to do over here now, since the organ gun blew up. And the gyrocopter's just lined itself up nicely to torch these poor Halflings here.
Oh, shaped in a flame.
So, let's see how the magic phase goes. So, the Anvil of Doom cast the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. He struck the rune and cast it on these Hawk Riders here, and managed to kill 2 of them with it. However, because that was a success, then the Halflings were able to start potentially turning him into a cockerel. He didn't turn into it right now, but it's going to get more likely as the game goes on, and maybe by the end he will turn into one. It is a distinct possibility. Well, the Dwarf shooting phase. The Stone Thrower fired into the General's giant unit of Vigilante Guard and killed that huge amount of them at the back there. Very tasty indeed. The Iron Drakes fired at the Hawks and took a wound off one of them. So I'm feeling everything over here is about to get lightly toasted by those Halflings flying along. Over here, the crossbowmen managed to kill a single Ram Rider. And the gyrocopter killed 5 of those little rangers in there. And that's it. So we're going to be moving on to Halfling turn 2. And it could go either way. Halfling movement phase. Well, quite eventful. You may have realised that some swans are missing here, because they attempted to charge into the Iron Drakes, and due to some incredible stand and shoot accuracy, they killed every single swan. No single feather remaining, just totally incinerated. Over here, though, the Hawks charged into the Grudge Thrower, so I don't think that's going to last long. Over here, everything just came up a little bit, including the Beekeepers, who are about to unleash their fury very shortly. Speaking of fury, the Crazed Cooks came twirling out of the pantry guard. One of them only made it to there. One of them went through these warriors and killed a few, and one of them went through the Hammerers and killed a few. So that's not very nice of them, is it? Over here, the Housewives charged into combat with the Iron Breakers. We'll see how wise that was in a minute. And the Ram Riders charged straight into Alric the Demon Slayer. We'll see how wise that was as well. Now the Beekeeper over there, they've moved up a tad. So let's see what these bees can do, shall we? Well, in the magic phase, nothing happened because I was forced to use my Rune of Spellbreaking to stop the famine being cast on the Hammerers. So we're going straight into the shooting phase. And these guys over here failed to kill any Iron Drakes with their bows. Slightly further along, lots of bees were unleashed into combat here with the Hammerers. 4 lots of them there. These archers over here fired into these warriors and killed one of them there. Poor chap. And a hot pot landed directly on these guys. Killed 4 of them. The other hot pot didn't do quite so well. It aimed at the Quarrelers and it scattered all the way over here and killed 2 of his own Ram Riders. So that is the power of the hot pot at work right there. And then over here, some more bees were launched into combat with the gyrocopter. And also, he lost a wound from shooting before that happened, from that array of archers there. So, it's getting very tasty now. Okay, Halfling combat phase. These bees that were launched out managed to finish off the gyrocopter because they rolled an obscene number of attacks against it. Over here, the impact hits from the charge wounded Mr. Big Butts, and then in retaliation, he killed 2 of them. So it's a bit of a draw over there. Over here, the Ironbreakers did not suffer any casualties from the housewives and then hit back and killed 6 of them, but they're steadfast. Over here, the bees that went into the hammerers found themselves smashed to bits and then evaporated with unstable rule, so there's none of those left. And then all the way down here, the hawks killed a crewman for the grudge thrower, and they failed to do anything back. And that's it. That's all that's going on there. So it's going to be Dwarf turn 2, and this is where the Halflings get got. Okay, Dwarf movement phase. The Master Engineer has joined Mr. Big Butts in his combat over there. Try and get revenge for the organ gun dying, take a few Halflings down with him. The Great Weapon Warriors charged into the flank of the Housewives to hopefully utterly crush them to bits right now. The Hammerers attempted a somewhat easy charge against the General's unit there, but rolled a 1 and a 2 on the dice, so they just amble forward 2 inches, which could be very bad. It's left them in a bit of a vulnerable spot between all these crazed cooks flailing around. Hand Weapon and Shield Warriors made it into that unit there with the swords, and that is all the Dwarf movement. Dwarf magic phase, the Anvil. Well, we got a ton of dice first of all, but then he channeled a lot as well. So there's a lot of dispel dice floating around. Tried to put extra armour on the Hammerers, ready for next turn when they might get attacked by something, but he managed to dispel it. And then I managed to inflict some wounds onto the cooks over there and killed 7 of them. Poor little fellas, they didn't know what hit them. All they want is to make soup. Shooting phase, the only viable target for the Iron Drakes were those skirmishing scout archers over there, which is a very bad idea, and didn't manage to kill any of them, barely hit them. And then over here, the crossbowmen were looking around for a juicy target, set their sights on that unit of archers over there, and killed 10 of them, with some quite spectacular rolling, but they passed their leadership test, so they're not running away, which would have been nice, because maybe they would have panicked a couple of hot pots at the back there. But no, you had to be Quaid. Well, Dwarf combat phase, you may notice there's only an engineer left standing here. That's because Mr. Big Butts was cut down, but striking at the same time he managed to kill half the Ram Riders, and then the engineer finished them off. So who would have thought the engineer would be the last one standing in that little scenario? But that's exactly what happened. Over here, even better, the Housewives have been obliterated by the combined might of the Ironbreakers and the Great Weapons. They fled but couldn't get away. Both of the units caught them, so there's just trampled Housewives all over the place. Then, they did a couple of casualties though, so they can be proud. Over here, these units did minimal damage to each other, and neither of them wanted to flee. Then, over on this big exciting combat in the corner, 1 more crewman was killed. So maybe they'll finish them off next turn. We'll see. Turn 3 movement. The bees randomly moved over here, just missing the engineer. That would have been nasty. Over here, we see there's an awful lot of charging going on into this poor unit of dwarves here. The cooks got a nice flank charge. 2 units of beekeepers have gone in as well. Down here, these crazed cooks, with their pinpoint accuracy, 2 of them, against the odds, managed to plough straight through the hammerers. They only killed 2 though, so that was unlucky, but they're also blocking my path now, and I don't really want to charge through them next turn, so I'm probably going to have to back away. This is what happens when the hammerers fail a fairly easy charge. They get stuck in no man's land, and now they're bogged down by crazy pot-wielding maniacs. And I believe that's all the movement. Okay, Halfling magic phase. This unit here suffered from the withering. Maybe it's cold outside. So their toughness has been reduced down to 1 for this big combat. I'm pretty sure they were going to die anyway, so I'm not overly bothered about that. Not too happy about the famine killing 3 hammerers though, but they're kind of screwed anyway with their positioning. So, let's see what happens in the shooting and combat phases, shall we? Action-packed shooting phase. These rangers took out the Master Engineer. He went down in a blaze of glory though. And over here, these halflings over there totally missed the Ironbreakers or failed to wound them. Then the hot pots fired. One of them scattered horribly off the Ironbreakers into the middle of nowhere, and the other one misfired, and it's not going to be able to shoot this turn or next. As you can see, it's upside down. Over here, these guys shot into the Iron Drakes, no effect. So it's a bit of an ineffective back and forth going on over here. The Hawks finally managed to kill off the Grudge Thrower in the corner here, took away its final wound, and then in the big juicy combat here, this unit is now dead, because they were munched from all sides by cooks, swordsmen and various beekeepers. They were on double ones to the leadership and they ran away. Being down to toughness 1 didn't help. So they got caught by these various units here that are now running towards that house, trampling dwarf carcasses, and the cooks have turned round to face this hammerer threat right there.
Hopefully not the fanatics.
That would be nice if the crazed cooks do go back into their own unit and dish out some culinary justice. So let's see how the dwarves can retaliate. Movement phase. The Iron Drakes have turned round, getting ready to shoot at these hawks. Over here, the hammerers, there's a lot of swift reforming going on. The hammers did a bit of swift reforming so they could slightly angle themselves away from these cooks and also avoid touching all these perilous, dangerous chefs here. The Iron Breakers and the Great Weapons have kind of dispersed from that pursuit and are coming back around the water, trying to get back into the action. Very slowly because they're dwarves. And these crossbowmen have realised, wait a minute, do we really want to shoot the bees that might actually help us more than hinder us by going back into those archers? Or do we want to just run away and maybe get into the game in the next couple of turns? So that's what they're doing. So that's the movement phase over. So dwarf magic, I tried to strike the Rune of Wrath and Ruin at the cooks, but he managed to dispel it. And then in the shooting phase, the Iron Drakes took aim at the hawks, and as you can see, they're all dead. They took 2 wounds off, I think, didn't they? And then they ran away off the table, failed their leadership test. So the Iron Drakes actually did quite well in the end so far, which is a weird thing to say. Halfling turn 4 movement. This unit here is closing in on the Iron Drakes. Over here we had some crazed cook shenanigans. One of them flew into the pantry guard and killed a few of them. He killed 5, didn't he?
5, yeah.
That's the one over there. They then charged into the hammerers, which took them through another crazed cook, who killed 3 more, and the other one went off in this direction. So that was quite nasty for them. There's a few beekeepers down here creeping towards the anvil by the looks of things. Over here, the beekeepers in this side are moving towards their bees to try and rein them in a bit to stop the potential carnage over there. And I believe that's it, but look at all those carcasses from his own crazed cooks. This is what happens when you unleash your own men with giant cooking pots and starve them for a week or whatever they do. I don't know whether halflings would be that cruel. Very eventful magic phase. This little wizard who looks suspiciously like an executioner in his pyjamas cast the Withering onto the hammerers and reduced their toughness by 1, but he did it by rolling 4 6s and nothing else. So the irresistible force caused a calamitous detonation which took out 4 hammerers, 3 cooks, put a wound on himself and wounded the chuck wagon. So that is quite devastating. We'll see how that affects this combat very shortly. And he also, that wizard actually tried to cast Famine, but it was easily dispelled. Okay, this is not good. The archers there killed 3 Iron Drakes with their shooting because I failed a big pile of saves, and then they rolled an 11 on the leadership test and ran off the table. So the Iron Drakes are corpses, or running off into the mountains somewhere. Otherwise, shooting, 2 of the Iron Breakers were killed by the various barrages of shooting from that side and over there. Just 2 of them, and the hot pot scattered off wildly. The end. Okay, Halfling combat phase. As you can see, all the hammerers are dead, through a combination of the Withering, reducing their toughness by 1, and also the Master Chef's ability, which in this turn allowed them to re-roll their failed to hit rolls. They managed to kill all of them, but the hammerers did get to swing back before they died, and they killed the wizard and 3 chefs. So they went down swinging. The game seemed to have it in for them a bit. They failed that charge earlier, then they were penned in by crazed cooks, and now this. The Calamitous Detonation really killed too many of them for them to be a viable combat unit anymore. So that's very unfortunate. But that was the only combat of the turn, so it's going to be the Dwarfs now. Dwarf movement phase. Now at the start of the turn, the Rune Lord did finally turn into a chicken, so he can't do anything unless he turns back to normal form during one of my magic phases, so we'll keep an eye on that. The Iron Breakers moved up trying to get into the fight. The Great Weapons moved up trying to get into the fight. Crossbowmen stood still because they're obviously going to shoot at something. Those are the only dwarves left, this line here. So it's quite a strong line, but that's all there is against this big wad of kind of displaced halflings all over the place. So let's see how this goes. So, the Runesmith is still clucking around there, didn't turn back into his regular bearded self just yet. So the only other thing to do in this turn was the crossbowman fired very fruitfully into the pantry guard. They managed to kill 5, but they passed the leadership test. So they're very, very thin on the ground there, and if they get into a fight with any of these units, they're bound to get smushed. So we're about to head into Halfling, turn 5. Okay, all the beekeepers are descending upon this chicken Rune Lord over there at the moment. These guys are not there, they're actually in the woods, up to that point there. The pantry guard have turned round, reformed, and are facing this imminent threat. And those spearmen, well, actually they're halberdiers, aren't they?
Halberdiers.
The halberdiers have gone over to face the Iron Breakers. And the random movement of the crazed cooks didn't hit anybody this turn, so this is the first time for everything. And over there, the beekeepers have got back into contact with their hives, so they're now controlling them again. Turn 5 magic phase. The one remaining wizard used his spells from the moot. First of all, he gave his own unit +2 strength. And then he cast Famine on the Ironbreakers, and 5 of them died. Just starved to death there in their armour. How unfortunate. Halfling shooting phase. The archers all the way over there managed to kill 1 quarreller on the hill. The Ironbreakers lost 1 more man to those archers there. And the Hot Pots, one of them scattered off this unit and the other one landed and managed to kill 3 of them. So, they're looking a bit thin on the ground as well now for that final showdown. Right. Dwarfs. The Great Weapons charged towards these pantry guard, but they fled. So I redirected the charge into these beekeepers and they decided to hold. The Ironbreakers decided, you know what, do we really want to charge into these strength-boosted halberdiers with so many men we have no chance whatsoever of killing them all by the end of the game, and if they get lucky they may actually kill us. So they thought, nope, let's run away a little bit, so they've gone that way as fast as they can. These guys have not moved. The Rune Lord is still a chicken, so he can't do anything. The Quarrellers fired over at the pantry guard and they killed the Master Chef there, and failed to wound the chuckwagon. So, combat, the Great Weapon Warriors utterly annihilated the beekeepers, and then they overran 2 inches, so they didn't quite reach the other beekeepers. So we'll see what dastardly plan they've got up their sleeve coming up in the final Halfling turn, right now. Last turn, movement phase. The 2 crazed cooks crashed into each other in a whirling frenzy of broth all over the place, and they both died. This one ended up down here. Over here, these halberdiers charged the Ironbreakers, who fled. Those guys also charged the Ironbreakers, so they fled again. Over here. So they look quite safe there. And the beekeepers and the bees attempted a charge into the rear of the Quarrellers, but they just failed by a single inch. So they just edged forward a tad. And no one else felt any need to move, apart from these guys here. Actually, they charged into the Great Weapon Warriors. That could be suicide. We'll find out in a minute. Shooting phase. The archers over there fired at the iron breakers, missed every time.
No, they didn't.
Didn't they?
It was a lie.
Oh yeah, I made one save actually. Those ones couldn't shoot because they charged. The hot pots both fired at the iron breakers and they both scattered into oblivion. And that's it. Oh yes, in the magic phase as well, there was nothing really worth casting because everything's either out of range or out of his arc. So there's nothing for him to do really. So there's no point in even attempting. Combat phase. The halflings managed to kill 2 dwarves. The dwarves swung back, killed 5, but the halflings passed the leadership test. So I might be able to finish them off by the end of the game. That'd be a few bonus victory points. We shall see. Okay, the dwarves. For the movement phase, I rallied the iron breakers, and that was it. Shooting phase, I shot into the cooks, and I managed to do a wound to the chuckwagon and his extra powerful chef there, who looks nothing like a chef for some reason.
It's got a cooking pot for a hat.
Over here, the great weapons managed to kill some of the swordsmen and chase them away, but didn't catch them, and they didn't quite run off the table. And that is pretty much the game. So, we're going to go and tally up the victory points now, and then report back with the result. So, we just tallied up the victory points, and the halflings did have an edge on victory points by about 400 or so, but it wasn't enough for an outright win, so it is technically a draw. So, look at this ultimate carnage all over the place. So, some of these units that weren't completely wiped out proved to be quite pivotal. That one, these still had a few models left. That one. So, the halflings did have some measure of revenge, but I think this seething grudge can only be settled with a narrative campaign. And you'll hear more about that in the very near future.
Your wizard was a chicken.
The Rune Lord did turn into a chicken, yes.
And never turned back. He's still a chicken.
So what did you think of that game?
It was good. Definitely better than the last whitewash of halfling life.
Yeah, a lot of halflings did get butchered to death in the last game. This time they did have it slightly better.
I do feel 2 more turns and I've had you.
Killing the organ gun in turn 1
Pivotal.
with irresistible force was huge.
Blowing up my general.
Look at that corpse pile over there. So much. Oh, lovely dice bag gets into the shot. And then on this side, the corpse pile, quite sizable as well.
It's just the swans.
The swans do take up quite a lot of space. See you next time, ladies and gentlemen. And the fact that the Master Chef has his magic ability, which in this turn allowed his unit
Damn
to...
it! I should also add that in.
They were already hitting them on 2s, wounding them on 2s, so it didn't matter.
That's alright.
Anyway,
Sorry.
that'll be subtly edited out.
Just start that again.
Yes. So, Halfling combat phase. Through a combination of the Withering, reducing their... Okay.